experience of half of humanity. And that's awful.
Men write books with love in the title. You've got Love, Etc. by Julian Barnes here. Whatever Love Means by David Baddiel. Despite the fact that the covers aren't pink or anything, I still think probably that the majority of people that bought those books were women. This one's quite interesting. Tony Parsons, Man and Wife. Black cover to appeal to boys, but you've got a little bride on the front like a wedding cake. And again, Tony Parsons, he's a male writer who writes about relationships. Most of the people that buy his books are women.
Yeah, if you look at the blurb on this, funny, tear-jerking, comfortingly feel-good, that's not going to appeal to a bloke, is it?
No, not when you could have something about football or guns.
When I started writing in the early 90s, there was absolutely nothing to describe women like me and my world. Women who had been told that they were equal, but they knew instinctively and in their pay packet that they weren't. Women who were at war with their bodies, at war with food. Women who were really, really worried about their fertility. When, you know, how late could they put off having children, and if they did have children, how would they juggle it with a career? And several writers started writing about the same themes at the same time.
9 stone, alcohol units 5, disgrace, urine of Satan, cigarettes 14, weed of Satan, will give up on birthday, calories 1,795. Have woken up, fed up. On top of everything, only 2 weeks to go until birthday, when we'll have to face up to the fact that another entire year has gone by, during which everyone else except me has mutated into smug married, having children left, right and centre, and making hundreds of thousands of pounds, while I career rudderless and boyfriendless through dysfunctional relationships and professional stagnation.
There was a danger that women might possibly get empowered by reading about their lives and seeing the contradictions and the conflicts in it. So immediately, the whole genre started coming under attack. And so again, women became apologetic about reading it. And even though the issues that it articulated were very, very close to their hearts, they felt, well, they're only chick-litty issues, so they can't really be terribly important. Not as important as the issues of men.
I think chick-lit is a misnomer. I think chick-lit is a way of containing women by saying, well, it's just writing for women. I think that it's quite an offensive term, really. And I think that a lot of men are writing a male version of chick-lit, but it's called literature.
I think romantic fiction is looked down upon because it's about feelings, about relationships, it's about human beings. And women are very good at being insightful about those things. And I think that troubles people, particularly men.
I've been waiting to meet somebody in the past, and I've been reading a chick-lit, and it might have gold lettering on the front, and then the person turns up for the important meeting and they're completely surprised that somebody who might be involved with them on a business level will enjoy that kind of book.
When I wrote Pearls, obviously I'd written, you know, the first draft of the novel, and the editors at Chatto and Windus called me in and said what they thought I needed to do to make this book absolutely perfect. The first thing they wanted was all this boring rubbish about World War II taken out. I've always said, if it was Sebastian Faulks, would they have asked him to take the war out? I don't think so. They're all stories that manage to combine enduring love with a war situation, which seems to be the magic ingredient that makes love okay for men to read about. Is the romantic fiction market still as strong as ever?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well it keeps crossing into other genres as well. So crime's very much on the up as well, and a lot of women are buying crime. But I think as a result of that, more crime novels are having increasingly romantic subplots to them. So P.D. James's Alex Dalgleish has always had a bit of an eye for the ladies, but those parts of those novels are getting stronger and stronger. And his current romance is you get cliffhangers at the end of each novel as to where that romance is going next. So I think not only is romantic novels still very, very strong, but they're spreading across other genres as well.
Romantic novels account for nearly 40% of all paperback fiction sold. And star writers such as Sophie Kinsella, Ginny Cooper or Marion Keyes can expect to sell over 10,000 hardbacks within a week of publication. But one publisher doesn't need famous authors to sell books. Mills & Boon is the romance brand, so much so that it has its own entry in the Oxford English Dictionary. In the UK alone, they claim 11 million readers. That's 40% of the female population. And a Mills & Boon is sold every 2 seconds. Now based in the aptly named Paradise Road, the firm was founded nearly 100 years ago by Gerald Mills and Charles Boon.
They began with a general publishing list, so they did fiction as well as an educational list. And the educational list was smaller, but did quite well, and we published that right up until the 1980s. Romance dominated because they just published more of what sold best. So romance eventually took over the list.
The growth of Mills & Boon is one of the success stories in publishing in the first half of the 20th century. Gerald Mills and Charles Boon specifically targeted the newly literate working class by publishing in a form and at a price within easy reach of a wide readership. Mills & Boon was especially popular with a generation of single women whose husbands and sweethearts had been killed in World War I, women who were now struggling to make ends meet during the Great Depression of the 1930s.
I think that the books that Mills & Boon were producing at that time were sheer escapism. They were like the Hollywood movies in the Depression. They offered people a world of security and happiness that reality just wasn't going to provide for them.
She made a little involuntary movement towards him, and then, without word or sign of any kind, he had stepped forward and taken her into his arms, covering her hair and her eyes with eager, passionate kisses, bending her head back until his lips reached her mouth and clung there in one long, time-effacing kiss. She lay back in the circle of his arms, letting the sweetness of his caresses sink down into her heart, heedless of time or place, knowing only that she was here in the arms of the one man who would ever matter to her out of all the world.
I think something that you see in some of the romantic novels of the day, there is only one great love, and if that love didn't come back from the war, you stayed true to it. And that kind of idea that women and men would find one perfect love, I think has really gone through the genre from its very inception. And it remains a fairly strong one today, that there is one person in the world who is right for you. Today we are probably more flexible and say, if you're lucky enough to find it. But even in the early days, in the 30s, you would find stories where the heroine might be married to somebody who was not worthy of her. And then he would tragically die. And somebody, the right man, the alpha male, would come along and save her.
But sadly, real life isn't usually that convenient. Could romantic fiction be leading women astray? I decided to get some professional advice. But there's always been an argument, hasn't there, that somehow reading these novels is bad for women. You know, that it gives women unrealistic expectations.
It's not that these books encourage people to have false expectations which then get in the way of reality. You could look at it the other way around and say that reality is only livable for us because we have impossible expectations. It's only because we have a fantasy life that reality is bearable for us.
Most readers of romantic fiction know